Hey everyone, I want to talk a little bit this morning about when you live with someone, presently or in the past, that has problems with addiction. Specifically, I'm going to talk about when a loved one has a problem with an addiction to either a prescription painkiller or opioid by another name, or something illegal such as fentanyl or carfentanil. When you have a family member that is engaging in this behavior, they are going to do anything and everything in their power to deny the fact that they have this addiction. Because if history shows us anything about addiction, people that are struggling with addiction will not take accountability for their addiction. Sometimes they will, but usually what is required for them to get to the point where they will take responsibility for their self-destructive behavior and their destructive behavior that impacts their friends and family. Typically what happens in those situations is they have to hit some level of rock bottom. And what's dangerous about the tolerance level of our society right now, and this isn't limited to the States, this is happening globally. When you have a tolerance of drug addiction, or you think that it's permissible because you have a mindset that is completely distorted, where you believe that that behavior is only impacting that individual, it opens the door for light sentencing of that sort of behavior. And the reason that this is so problematic is that many addicts have children. Many times their behavior is severely negatively impacting their children and their children's survival. So we need to look at this and address it with common sense. Obviously, my position, as I'm sure you can tell, is that I fully support the police and the military when they go after cartels and seize drugs and keep them off the streets. I think that this work is noble. I think that it is necessary. And yes, there are in certain areas in government and the police, there are bad apples, unfortunately, where sometimes the stuff ends up back on the streets because there are certain bad actors within those organizations. And that is why greed is so corrupting. So we have to be very careful in the way that this is dealt with. I think that it needs to be dealt with. I don't think that being soft on drug crimes is the solution. I'm not really sure how within the system, within the government system and within the police structure, I'm not sure what can be done to mitigate the greed that sometimes takes place within those groups that facilitates these things making their way back out onto the street, which is obviously what we want to prevent because it is causing so many deaths. You can't look at any administration as being legitimate that wants to put out drug safety kits, because the very idea that they are doing something good by enabling people to continue their drug use is a problem. Nobody gets better simply because their ability to safely use drugs is facilitated by government handouts. What I'm saying is that the very idea that this would be pushed by any government agency is counterintuitive to health. You don't take an addict and enable their addiction, but you also have to consider the source. I mean, who are we talking about here? And look at that family tree. certainly somebody of that mindset isn't capable of acknowledging the harm because it's facilitated in some way within that family structure. And I think you guys all know who I'm referring to without me having to say the person's name. So I hope that this has been helpful in some way. We don't enable addiction. We don't do it. And if you're doing it, you're part of the problem. You're causing harm to the friends and family members of that addict. Addicts need treatment. They require detox. They need to be put in situations that facilitate detox. And sometimes they require an intervention, a forced intervention, to prevent them from continuing to harm others. This is not a form of disenfranchising them or taking away their liberties. Sometimes these things need to be done and need to be enforced because the ripple effects of the harm that they are causing to others are so substantial that that is the only way of mitigating the damage that they are causing to others. Unfortunately, because I live in an area that seems to be extremely liberal in a lot of its policies, I don't see enforcement happening, and I don't see protections being put into place to protect against the ripple effect of this damaging behavior from others. That is not to say that I'm infallible or that I've never made wrong choices in my life. I'm simply saying this because it needs to stop. We need to turn the tide in this behavior. And I really strongly believe that lockdowns and all of the restrictions have only exacerbated the problems with addiction. And that's evident if you look at the statistics. So the measures that have been taken in the name of keeping people safe from the pandemic have not done anything to curb addiction and abuse in society. In fact, they exacerbated that problem. From a standpoint of dealing, for example, with alcoholism, it made absolutely no sense to me that they would be locking down businesses that were productive and would keep businesses like the liquor stores open, knowing that they cause problem, knowing that they contribute highly to domestic violence, knowing that they exacerbate other addictions, such as drug addictions to legal or illegal drugs. These are all symptoms of a broken system that does not address the causal factors of social dysfunction. And until we can actually look at these issues and do something meaningful to address it and do something logical to address it, we're going to continue to see a downward spiral of society, leaving us vulnerable to invasion by other countries that don't tolerate this sort of stupidity. This needs to be taken seriously. And there are so many people in this country with a casual attitude towards this type of conduct. And I'm here to tell you that if we don't make some serious course corrections, we're going to be taken over by some outside force. We're going to be put in a terrible situation. We need to take back our country. We need to make changes, meaningful changes that are going to protect our environment for future generations. There is nothing more selfish than doing that to your friends and family. If you've done this, you need to seek treatment. And if you're not a person that's done this, but you've been impacted by this behavior through a friend or family member, you need to take steps to distance yourself from that toxicity, because inevitably it will bleed onto your doorstep. Do the right thing. Protect yourself, protect your kids. Stay away from friends and family that normalize this kind of behavior, because ultimately it will end up costing you in some way, shape, or form. I hope that you will take this message seriously. The steps that the government has taken thus far in the fight against drugs, the war against drugs, they've been unsuccessful. And we've only seen that exacerbated over the last couple of years. I mean, it really has been a total shit show. So share your suggestions with each other. Share your suggestions with your legislators. Share your firsthand experience of what you've dealt with other friends and family and possible solutions. It does no good to say, here's the problem, and not present possible solutions to the problem. So we need to be proactive in this, not reactive, because reactivity has gotten us nowhere. I hope this message has been helpful. God bless.